It's monthly wrap-up time. Welcome to today's video. It's the last day of the month, which can only mean one thing, and that's my monthly wrap-up. I would say we've had an okay month. How many books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books and 1 audiobook. So let's run through the books that I read this month. I also thought it would be so interesting to start doing a book of the month. So at the end of these monthly wrap-ups, to name the one book that I enjoyed the most, like an honorary mention. You know, I just thought that would be a fun idea. So the first one I actually started in January, but I finished it in Feb, so it didn't quite make it on to my January wrap-up. And that book is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Now this is like a literary fiction, mystery... what else? How do you even explain it? I'm gonna go with literary fiction mystery book. I'm not gonna lie, I had such high hopes for this book. I'd heard so many great things about it. And it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. It's very Shakespeare heavy, which I just really did not expect, and it was kind of jarring if you don't know a lot of Shakespeare's plays. And I'm sure that there are a lot of hidden meanings between the characters and some of Shakespeare's characters and like some parallels there. But because I don't know Shakespeare that well, it just didn't hit in the same way that it would have done for somebody that knows Shakespeare's characters, if that makes sense. It basically follows this group of drama students who are at this really prestigious school. So I would say it's dark academia as well. It just follows their dynamic and how they're always competing with each other for different roles for the Shakespeare plays that are being put on. But basically Oliver, who's the main character, served 10 years in prison for a murder that happened within this group of people. And he's just been released, and the detective that was working on his case at the time really just wants to know the answers and wants to know what happened. And he agrees to tell him everything. So it's basically us going back in time and learning what happened and about this group of people. I will say that the murder mystery part of this did seem kind of minor, and I just thought it was very heavily focused on their dynamic with each other and how the group was working and how they all sort of coped with what had happened. The actual mystery part wasn't that big, in my opinion. There was also a lot of actual Shakespeare's plays written in here and a lot of description of what they were doing on stage, and it was almost like we were watching the play. It kind of described every movement on stage, and for me, I just don't think that added anything. Now, like I said, I think there were a lot of like inside sort of Easter eggs here and there that probably parallel to a lot of Shakespeare's work, but because I don't know that, it just was quite jarring to read, and there was a lot of Shakespeare in here, like a lot, and I found that I was sort of just kind of skimming it at those points. I was also really hoping for a big twist, and I was kind of disappointed. I hate saying that because I don't want to put you off, because if this is a book that intrigues you, then I think definitely go for it and give it a go. But for me personally, I think I was expecting a lot more like thriller mystery vibes from it, and it was definitely dark academia literary fiction, so quite different. I will say that there were actually quite a few lines that I did actually highlight because they were just written so nicely, and there were just some quotes that really got me thinking, and I liked that part of it, and I think that's what mainly kept me reading. I'm not going to say more because I don't want to really put people off if this is on your TBR, because I definitely think you should give it a go. It might be something you really connect with. So I rated this 2 stars, and I think the only reason that it wasn't a 1 star was because some of the quotes that I got from it and the way some bits were written were quite poetic, and I did really enjoy those bits. But overall, I just don't think this book was for me. Next up we have Ward D by Freida McFadden. This book, I kid you not, I was addicted to this book. I literally could not put it down. I read this in a day. I absolutely loved it. It basically follows a med student who has to do a night shift at this psychiatric ward, and she's absolutely dreading it. She really doesn't want to go, but she has to as part of her course. There are also reasons why she doesn't want to go so much, and it was just so good. I absolutely loved it. And we basically just follow her through the night on this ward, and it just all kicks off, and it's so good. It's so good. I don't know why these pages are so white, but they are literally like compared to a normal book. I just absolutely love Freida McFadden's books. I've been on such a Freida McFadden binge at the minute. I'm just absolutely loving her books. They are so gripping, they are so fast paced, so easy to read, and they've always got some jaw-dropping twist or element to it that I just live for. I live for. I rated it 5 stars just because of how much I absolutely loved it, and it is one that since I put down I've been thinking about. And the ending was everything I could have hoped for. The last page was literally everything I could have hoped for. And then I filmed a Read Romance with me for a week because Valentine's Day was coming up. I think this is where my slump kind of started. So let's have a look at the books that we read. So the first one that I was reading for that video was The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. Now, I actually ended up DNFing this book because I could just feel myself going into a slump. I got to about 130 pages in, which is actually more than I usually give it. I usually give it about 100 before I decide. And this is one where I can't tell whether I just wasn't in the right mood for it or I just wasn't really enjoying it. It's one where I kind of had an idea in my head about what it was going to be about, and it was nothing like that. And it took a really weird turn in my opinion, but I don't know whether it was weird just because of what I was expecting it to be compared to actually what route they took it down. I don't know. So the reason I've kept my bookmark in here is because I might pick it up at some point. I might give it another go. I haven't written it off entirely, but just for the mood that I was in, I just was not vibing with it. So I would love to know if any of you have read this and whether it's worth carrying on and whether I should give it another go. I was just really imagining this to be a cute forced proximity thing where the best man and the maid of honour are kind of forced to spend time together sorting out these things for the wedding. That's what I was imagining. But it is not that at all. Like, the groom gets kidnapped the night before his wedding and it's just, I'm confused. I'm confused by this book. But let me know. The more I'm remembering it, the more I'm thinking maybe this book just isn't for me. Maybe it's just not for me. So I didn't rate this one because I DNF'd it, but also part of the reason why I DNF'd it was because I got a very exciting package in the post, and that was If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nowlin. This one was also part of the Reading Romance for a Week, and if you've seen any of my videos, you'll probably know how much I've anticipated this book. This is the second book to If He Had Been With Me, and I absolutely loved that book. It's part of the reason why I'm even into reading in the first place, and that book just honestly has a special place in my heart. So when I heard that there was a second one coming out, I was so excited. I could not believe it. I just had to read it straight away. So If He Had Been With Me was a 6-star read. So I did kind of have some high expectations, but also I kind of thought it probably isn't going to be as good as the first one just because of how special that book is to me. So if you're not aware of these books, it basically follows Autumn and Finney, who were best friends growing up. They got to high school and they sort of drifted apart, and it just follows them basically working their way back to each other. And it's just one of my favourite books and one that I continuously think about. But the first one is all from Autumn's perspective. So this one has 3 different perspectives in. The first third is Finney's perspective, and I would say his perspective was the last third of the first book, if that makes sense. You do kind of get a few new scenes with them two in, but it's mainly just retelling it from his perspective. And then we get Jack, who is Finney's best friend, and I didn't really remember him that much in the first book, but we follow his point of view in the middle, and then we get Autumn and kind of what she's doing afterwards and just following where she's at now. And I loved this. I loved being back with these characters and back in this world. I could read 500 books with these characters. I adore Finney and Autumn. I think they're so cute, and I really liked seeing it from Finney's perspective. I just thought it was so sweet, and we really got more of the vibe of kind of what he was like and how into her he was. But the part that really stood out to me in this book was Jack's perspective. I was so apprehensive kind of going into that because I kind of didn't know what the point was of including his perspective because it's not his story. But wow, that to me was probably the most heartbreaking part of this whole book. It was just so heartbreaking. And we definitely got a different perspective of what was going on at that time. I can't really say too much without giving the first one away, but Jack's perspective is what really made this book for me. Autumn's I was a tiny bit disappointed about, just because I kind of hoped for more past memories and sort of flashbacks with her and Finney. But it was very heavy on one topic, which I kind of should have expected, I think. But I don't know, I still liked it. It was still good. Now I did rate this at the time a 5 stars, but I remember being really indecisive between a 4 and a 5. So let's just call it 4.5. I really enjoyed it, and it definitely made me want to go and reread the first one. Especially to see kind of where Jack is in the first one and sort of how much of a character he was in there, because I don't really remember him. And then the next one I read was The Mix-Up by Holly. I don't know how to say that name. Can you see that? This one I thought was going to be a really light-hearted, cutesy romance, and it was all up until one point. And then it just dealt with something quite heavy, which I do talk about in my vlog. And I think it's really nice to see that in a book and see it be represented. I just think I wasn't really in the mood for a heavy sort of book in that sense. The first half of this was very cute, it was very readable. And the second, I was kind of feeling myself getting into a bit of a slump, and I listened to the majority of this on audiobook on Spotify. I think that really helped me get through it. I think if I had to sit down and read it all, I think I probably would have got into a slump. This basically follows Paige, who's a wedding cake baker, and one day her ex and his new fiance come into her shop and ask her to do her wedding cake for her. And she's basically talking to her friend about how this all happened, and her friend's like, come to this party and I'll set you up with somebody. So she goes and she's talking to her friend, and her friend goes, it's that guy over there in the black top. There's two guys in black tops. So she basically doesn't know which one to go for. And it just follows her relationship with one of these guys. I rated this 3 stars. I think it was a good book, and it was funny and lighthearted at some points. But then, like I said, it did take a bit of a darker tone, which I think would really resonate with some people. I think it would definitely resonate with some people. And I did enjoy this book as a whole. I just think at the time that I read this, I wasn't necessarily in the mood to be dealing with that, you know? And the last one in my reading romance for a week was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was such a cute book. This basically follows Nora and Charlie, and Nora is a literary agent and Charlie is an editor. And Nora's sister basically persuades her to go to this small town and take a break from work basically. So they go on this little mini holiday, and she bumps into Charlie, who's an editor who she's met before, and she can't really believe that she's bumped into this guy that she knows from work in this small town. It's a very cute small town romance. I absolutely loved the banter between Nora and Charlie. I just thought that was done so well. And it's also funny because she's a literary agent and she reads a lot of books. She talks about tropes and how, oh, it's a classic like small town trope, and it's just really funny. And because it also doesn't make all the small town things that you get in every small town romance, doesn't make them feel cliche, if that makes sense, because she's noticing them. You know? I don't know, I just thought that was clever. I rated this 4 stars. It was just a cute little small town romance and I really enjoyed it. And then we have The Teacher by Freida McFadden. This book got me out of a reading slump. It's just, I haven't had that feeling of I need to get back to my book in a while, and this book gave me that. I was absolutely obsessed with it when I was reading it. I read it in under 24 hours. So this is Freida McFadden's newest book. It basically follows 2 teachers who are married and both work at the same school. And it follows Addie, who is a student at the school, and she previously was associated with a student-teacher affair and got this teacher fired. So the teachers are quite wary of her, and the students don't really want anything to do with her because they think that she had this affair with the teacher. And it's just so good. I can't really say any more without giving the plot away, but there are so many twists and turns in this book. You just don't see them coming, and I am so here for it. I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for a good thriller or a book in general to get you out of a reading slump, because this really worked for me. And I rated this 5 stars because I was just obsessed. I was obsessed. And then the audiobook that I listened to was The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. Now, I love a Lynn Painter book. They're just the perfect books if you want a rom-com, cutesy high school romance. So The Do-Over basically follows Emily, who wants to have the perfect Valentine's Day ever. And she wakes up, she has a list of things that she wants to do that day, and it basically all goes wrong. She has a horrible day and she can't wait for it to be over. And she goes to bed that night and she wakes up and it's Valentine's Day again. And she's like, what's going on here? And we basically follow her reliving Valentine's Day. So it's very Groundhog Day, but make it fluffy high school romance. I just really enjoyed this. I was chuckling along when I was getting ready in the morning, and it just brought me a lot of joy. I think it was exactly what I wanted from a Lynn Painter book, and reading it made me want to go and get the physical copy because it was just so cute, and I just found them so easy to read or listen to. And I rated this 4 stars. It was just such a solid rom-com book. And then I read probably my most anticipated read of the entire year, and that's Magnolia Park's Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I have been waiting for this book for the longest time. I was just so happy to be back in this world, back with these characters. I just adore them. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. I did really enjoy this book, but it just didn't match up to the other ones for me personally. And I'm going to explain why. So for any of those that don't know, this is the 5th book in the Magnolia Parks universe series. It's the 3rd book from Magnolia and BJ's perspective. I'm not going to really explain the plot of this one, just because I can't do that without ruining the others. And for any of those that want to read the other ones, I don't want to ruin it for you, because this is just an extension of their story and we follow along from where we left off. I just feel like I have so many thoughts on this book and I don't even know where to start. So the start of this I actually found a bit slow, and it took me a while to get back into this world, and I don't really know why that was. I think part of the reason why I feel the way I do about this book is because Magnolia and BJ in all the other books have had so much conflict, and it just keeps the book moving and you just want to know what happens next, whereas there was no real conflict between them two in this book. And considering how chunky this book is, that's quite a lot of pages to get through without them having any sort of conflict. I know they kind of did have bits here and there, but it was nothing compared to the other books, and it just very much felt like them two working through the problems going on around them, if that makes sense. Which I did enjoy reading, but I probably just didn't enjoy it as much as the other books with all the conflict in. I don't know how to say this without spoiling anything. I'm going to put a timestamp here. This is your spoiler warning. I'm going to put a timestamp here so that you can jump if you haven't read this book yet, because there's something that I can't really talk about without spoiling it for you. So here's your warning. Please skip to this timestamp. Okay. Have you gone? Bridget. Let's talk about Bridget. Now, where we left off from the last Magnolia Parks book, I was distraught. And this one picks up 3 months in the future, and I think I just really wanted that immediate what happened afterwards, how did it all unfold. I know we did get parts here and there, but it just didn't hit the same way, I don't think, because it wasn't from Magnolia's perspective. Most of that was from BJ's perspective, kind of watching Magnolia and watching it happen. But I think I just really craved that immediate fallout of what had happened in the last book. And then also I was kind of hoping that Magnolia would be constantly reminded of Bridget towards the beginning of this book, and we sort of get a lot more memories from the past and just everything reminding her of Bridget, if that makes sense. I don't know whether any of this is making sense. I think I really just hoped for a bit more of them two together. See, now I'm saying that, I'm like, well, we did get that scene, but I don't know what it was. Something was just missing for me. I can't even pinpoint what it was, which I know is so unhelpful. I also think there were so many subplots that kind of came out of nowhere and to me just felt a bit unnecessary at times. Like the whole thing with BJ's dad and his mum and what was going on there, I just kind of felt that was unnecessary. I know why that was done, but I just think wasn't needed. I don't know, because I just felt like there was so much going on and so many subplots. There was one other thing that really bothered me, and I don't know whether I missed it somewhere in the book. Please let me know if I did. But it's the fact that the car crash with Bridget and Magnolia was caused by a hit put out on her, and Julian was basically the reason for that indirectly, and it bothered me that she never found out. And I know that there's 2 more Daisy Hates books coming and she might find out in there, but I just feel like I would have liked to see it from her perspective and seen sort of what she thinks about it. That just sort of felt like a major thing that was kind of left open-ended. But again, I know that there's 2 more books coming. I think I just would like to see that from Magnolia's perspective. But again, also, I don't know whether I missed something there. Did that happen and I just missed it? I don't know. Help. It doesn't sound like a good book when I'm talking about it like that, but it is. It is. I just had really high expectations. Okay, I promise. Having said all that, this was still a 4.5 star rating for me. I was so in between 4 and a 5 star. It's not the 6-star read that the other 2 Magnolia books were to me, but it is still good. It's still got the characters that I love. It's still in this world. Loved BJ in this. I've always had a soft spot for BJ and I don't know why. But I just love to see his growth in this. I loved the character he became in this and just how he dealt with everything. And I really think he was the shining star in this book. And the scene with Julian in, I could not believe what I was reading. I was literally like, Julian, you're killing me. You're killing me. I'm a Julian girly through and through, but not in the way where I want Magnolia to end up with Julian, just in the way that Julian is for me. He's mine. I feel like I've ranted on and on about this book. I'm gonna leave it there. It was a 4.5 rating. Also love to know what you guys thought of this and whether you thought similar things to what I thought, or I don't know, I just feel like I'm the only one that thinks like that, but I said what I said. And then the last book that I read this month was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I had such high expectations for this book just because of how much I'd heard about it, and I heard that it was a really good thriller. By the ending, I was confused. I was so confused. I was just thinking, are you leaving it open for us to decide, or are there so many plot holes in this? So many things left open-ended. I don't know. This basically follows Adam and Amelia, who go on a romantic getaway to the Scottish Highlands to try and basically save their marriage. And it's basically the case of, can they trust each other? What lies are they telling each other? And what's going on, basically. This was a 3-star book for me. I really enjoyed it when I was reading it, but I don't think I'm going to be thinking about it afterwards. I really enjoyed the writing in this, and it makes me want to go and get another Alice Feeney book, because there were just some things that she'd written that really got me thinking, and I was really like, oh, I've never thought of it like that, or I don't know how to explain it. That's the best I can explain it. It was just written really nicely, and it was kind of a book that I wanted to underline and like annotate, even though I don't really do that with thrillers, but I kind of wish I had done. I think because of how open-ended the ending was, it was kind of unsatisfying. It's one of those books where I'm glad I've read it, but it's not one of my favourite thrillers that I've ever read, you know? I think I think this book confused me more than anything. And there was one plot hole that really bothered me, and I'm gonna say it because I want to know if any of you have the answers that I'm looking for. It's not really a spoiler because I still don't know the answer. It's basically when they go to this house, and it's basically hinted that he has been there before, because how does he know the house so well, and he like skips the stairs that creak. How does he know the house so well? How does he know it so well? Because I still don't have the answer to that. If anybody knows, please send me a message, please tell me. Because confused. I honestly feel like I've been talking for 5 hours. So they're all the books that I read in February. Oh, book of the month! Book of the month! Oh, this is actually quite hard. Okay. The book of the month goes to, can we have a drum roll please? Insert imaginary drum roll here. So book of the month, this is going to be my favourite one, the one that stood out to me the most. And I'm not going to lie, I was actually quite surprised by this, but this is the one that I keep coming back to the most in my head. And that's Ward D by Frida McFadden. Round of applause. I don't know what it is about this book. I think on enjoyment level, it's book of the month, and just the fact that it was exactly what I needed at the time that I read it, and I just loved it. Book of the month, everyone. Okay, so they're the books that I read in February. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know your favourite book that you've read this month in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in my next video.